All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into Microsoft,
Okay.
specifically their performance in the AI arena. We've got some really interesting financial analysis to unpack here.
Sound good.
And, I think this is going to be really insightful for our listeners. We're going to be kind of examining, if their stock is a good buy,
Right.
what the future might hold for them, risks, opportunities, all that good stuff.
It's pretty fascinating to see, how a company like Microsoft, like a giant like that, navigates a field as dynamic as AI. I mean, it's really a case study in itself.
Absolutely.
And what's really interesting is how well they're doing, even with some pretty significant challenges,
Yeah, well, and speaking of doing well, let's get into those numbers.
Yeah.
Microsoft's recent financial report paints a pretty rosy picture, at least on the surface. Revenue's up 12% year over year to a whopping $69.6 billion.
Wow.
Operating income soared 17% to $31.7 billion. And net income saw a healthy 10% bump to $24.1 billion. I mean, those are some serious gains. But what really caught my eye was the emergence of this potential disruptor. This Chinese company, DeepSeek.
Right.
They managed to develop a really powerful AI model for just $6 million.
Yeah, that's right. And that figure, that number, is really kind of sending ripples through the industry. Because U.S. companies have been investing billions of dollars in these massive AI data centers. And I think this model from DeepSeek really raises the question, are those massive investments still viable, in a world where you have these leaner, more cost-effective solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if DeepSeek can deliver comparable performance at a fraction of the cost, that could force some serious strategic reassessments.
Yeah.
How is Microsoft responding to this?
Well, I think a key part of their strategy is their partnership with OpenAI.
Yeah.
And their commitment to Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform. OpenAI continues to rely on Azure, which is really driving significant growth in their cloud bookings. And overall, Microsoft's AI business is seeing explosive growth, a staggering 175% year over year. I mean, they've already surpassed a $13 billion annual revenue run rate. So that's a pretty clear indication that they're making an aggressive push into AI. Wow. Yeah, that is impressive. But it's not all smooth sailing. I mean, their stock recently took a 5% hit. What happened there? Yeah, I mean, that dip was triggered by Azure's growth figures. So while they saw respectable 31% year-over-year growth, it actually fell short of what analysts were expecting. They were expecting 33% growth. So even a small miss like that can make investors pretty jittery, especially in a sector like tech,
Yeah, it's so volatile. So even with strong overall performance, missing those expectations, even by a tiny bit, it can just completely spook the market. It's crazy to think about how much influence these analyst predictions have on investor behavior. But let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. I mean, Microsoft seems to be firing on all cylinders. The cloud division's doing well, their productivity tools, even their personal computing segment. It's all showing growth. And they're not afraid to invest in the future either. I mean, they're dropping $22.6 billion on AI and cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, those investments are really crucial, I think, for Microsoft's long-term strategy. They understand that AI isn't just some passing trend. It's a fundamental shift in how we interact with technology. And their commitment to Azure is really paying off. The commercial bookings are up by 67%, largely driven by OpenAI's reliance on their platform.
That's amazing. Okay, so we see this big investment in AI, but can you give us some concrete examples? How is Microsoft actually using it? What are they building?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for example, take GitHub Copilot. It's this tool that's used by over 150 million developers. And it essentially acts as an AI pair programmer.
Yeah.
So it uses these machine learning models to analyze your code, to suggest lines of code, to complete functions, even to identify potential bugs, all in real time. It's really like having an AI assistant helping you to code more efficiently.
Wow, that's really cool. I mean, it sounds incredibly helpful. What else? What else have they got?
Well, they've also developed Azure AI Foundry. It's basically a suite of tools and services that allow developers to build, deploy, and manage their own AI applications. And it's attracting a lot of attention, over 200,000 monthly active users. And the cool thing about it is it gives you access to all these pre-trained AI models, data sets, and infrastructure. So you don't have to start from scratch when you're building AI solutions.
So they're not just building AI tools for themselves. They're creating this platform for others to build on as well. That's really smart. But, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. DeepSeek and their low-cost model. I mean, that has to be making some investors nervous, right? Especially given how much Microsoft is investing in AI infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, actually addressed it directly. He argued that they're seeing significant cost reductions and performance gains in their AI infrastructure. because of ongoing optimizations.
So it's not just about, throwing money at the problem. It's about being strategic
Exactly.
and efficient with those investments.
Exactly. Nadella also highlighted the importance of Moore's law, which states that computing power doubles roughly every 2 years. So as Microsoft expands their AI infrastructure globally, they're able to leverage these exponential improvements in processing power, which is driving down costs and making their AI services more accessible.
So they're essentially betting that continuous advancements in technology will help them to maintain that competitive edge, even as the cost of developing AI models decreases. It's a bold strategy.
It is, and it's a reminder that
Mm-hmm.
the AI landscape is incredibly dynamic. What works today might not work tomorrow. Companies like Microsoft have to be adaptable, and they have to be constantly innovating to stay ahead of the curve.
It seems like this DeepSeek development is a bit of a wake-up call for the industry. It's forcing everyone to think about how they can do more with less.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which ultimately could benefit everyone.
Absolutely. Increased competition often leads to faster innovation and better products for consumers. So while it might cause some short-term anxiety, in the long run, this type of disruption could actually be a really positive force in the evolution of AI.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've seen Microsoft's strong financial performance, their commitment to AI, and the potential challenges posed by these new competitors like DeepSeek. But what does all of this mean for their stock? Is it a good buy?
Well, the article that we were looking at suggests that. At a share price of $415, Microsoft stock is reasonably valued, with a P/E ratio of 27.9x. They have strong returns on equity and are projected to see continued earnings growth.
So on paper, it looks like a solid investment. But are there any red flags that investors should be aware of? I mean, this AI landscape is changing so rapidly, and those projections could easily be thrown off course.
You're absolutely right. The tech industry is notoriously unpredictable. The emergence of these companies like DeepSeek just goes to show how quickly things can change.
So what should potential investors be thinking about? What are the key factors that could determine Microsoft's success or failure in this AI arms race?
That's a great question. It's one that we're going to dive into in much more detail in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore the specific challenges Microsoft faces, the strategies they're employing, and the potential risks and rewards for investors who are looking to bet on their future.
All right, so you heard it here first, folks. We've got a deep dive into Microsoft, AI, and the future of tech, all wrapped up in one neat little package. Stick around, because when we come back, we're getting into the nitty-gritty of Microsoft's strategy and what it all means for you.
Welcome back. So in this part of our deep dive, I think let's kind of shift gears a little bit and delve into the potential implications of this DeepSeek model and what it could mean for the future of AI. I mean, imagine a world where developing these powerful AI models becomes even cheaper and faster.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Could we be on the verge of AI development becoming truly democratized, like accessible to practically anyone with a good idea?
It's a question worth considering. I mean, if that were to happen, it could really upend the current power dynamics in the tech industry. Think about the possibilities for startups, research institutions, even individuals, anyone with, limited resources. But a vision for how AI could be used to solve a problem.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of the early days of the internet, when suddenly anyone could create a website and potentially reach a global audience. But except now it's not just about information, it's about having access to these powerful AI tools that were once only available to, these big tech giants. What do you think? Could we be on the cusp of a similar revolution?
It's definitely within the realm of possibility. If these tools become widely available, I think we could see this explosion of innovation leading to new applications, new industries, new solutions to problems we haven't even thought of yet.
That's exciting, also a bit intimidating, right? I mean, a paradigm shift like that would have far-reaching consequences, not just for the tech industry, but for society as a whole.
Right. There are a lot of ethical and societal considerations that come along with, making such powerful technology widely accessible. But I think for now, let's maybe focus on Microsoft and how they're positioning themselves within this evolving landscape.
Okay, sounds good. So we know that Azure took a slight hit in terms of growth, but what about their other business segments? How are those performing?
Well, Microsoft's cloud division as a whole, which includes Azure, is still a major growth driver for them. They generated $25.5 billion in revenue last quarter, which is a 19% increase year over year.
So even with Azure's, minor stumble, the cloud is still a powerhouse for them. What about their other segments?
Well, their productivity and business processes division, which includes products like Microsoft 365, is also performing well. It grew by 14% to $29.4 billion.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It seems like everyone uses Microsoft Office these days. It's practically become the industry standards. But what about their more personal computing segment, the one that includes Windows and devices? Is that still a significant part of their business?
It is, although it's not growing at the same pace as their cloud and productivity segments. But it's holding its own. It saw a modest growth of 4%, reaching $15.3 billion in revenue.
So it sounds like Microsoft's future is pretty firmly rooted in cloud computing and AI. But are they putting their money where their mouth is? Are these investments they're making enough to keep them competitive in these rapidly changing fields?
Well, they're certainly making a strong effort. As we mentioned earlier, they've poured $22.6 billion into AI and cloud infrastructure. That's a significant commitment.
Yeah.
And it shows that they're serious about maintaining their leadership position.
Yeah, and it's not just about the money either, right? They're also forming these strategic partnerships, like the one with OpenAI, which gives them access to, cutting-edge AI technology and talent.
Exactly. They're not just throwing money at the problem. They're being strategic with their investments. They're targeting areas
with high growth potential and aligning themselves with key players in the AI space.
And they're not afraid to take risks, which is essential in such a dynamic industry. They're constantly experimenting with new technologies, exploring new applications for AI, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Yeah, and at the same time, they're not just chasing the latest shiny new thing either.
Yeah.
They're also focused on making their existing infrastructure more efficient.
Yeah.
As Satya Nadella pointed out, they're seeing significant cost reductions and performance gains thanks to these ongoing optimizations in their AI infrastructure.
So they're striking a balance between innovation and efficiency. They're pushing the boundaries, but also making sure that they're operating as efficiently as possible. It sounds like they're taking a multifaceted approach, which is probably smart given how unpredictable, the tech landscape can be.
Precisely. And I think that's a key takeaway for anyone, whether you're an investor, a tech enthusiast, or just someone who's curious about the future. Success in the tech world requires both bold vision and meticulous execution.
You need to be able to dream big, but also have the ability to turn those dreams into reality. And it seems like that's what Microsoft is doing, at least for now. But as we've discussed, the emergence of these companies, like DeepSeek, adds this whole other layer of complexity to the equation. It'll be interesting to see how Microsoft adapts to this new competitive landscape.
Yeah, and that brings us back to the question we posed earlier. Can Microsoft maintain its dominance in the AI landscape amidst these disruptive forces? The answer, of course, remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure. The AI revolution is just getting started. And Microsoft is determined to be at the forefront.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture, the disruptive potential of AI, and Microsoft's overall strategy. But let's circle back to something that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Their stock, we know it took a dip after they missed those Azure growth expectations. But is that dip a cause for concern? Or could it actually be a buying opportunity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It really depends on your individual risk tolerance and your investment goals.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. But can you at least provide some context for our listeners? What are the key factors they should consider when evaluating Microsoft as an investment?
Well, the article we're analyzing suggests that at a share price of $415, Microsoft stock is reasonably valued. They have a price-to-earnings ratio of 27.9x, which is in line with other tech giants.
So it's not like the stock is exorbitantly priced. It seems to be trading at a fair value relative to its peers.
Yeah, and when you factor in their strong returns on equity and their projected earnings growth, it starts to look even more appealing.
But of course, there's always the risk that those growth projections won't pan out. I mean, the tech industry is notoriously unpredictable. What do you think? Are those projections realistic? Or are they overly optimistic, given all this competitive pressure that Microsoft is facing?
That's where things get a little tricky. The emergence of DeepSeek and these other low-cost AI models adds a layer of uncertainty to the equation. It's entirely possible that these new competitors could chip away at Microsoft's market share, making it harder for them to hit those ambitious growth targets.
So investing in Microsoft is a bit of a gamble then. There's the potential for significant upside, but there's also a fair amount of risk involved.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Investing in any tech company, especially one operating in a field as dynamic as AI, comes with inherent risks. The key is to be aware of those risks and to make informed decisions based on your own individual circumstances and investment goals.
I think that's great advice for anyone considering investing in Microsoft, or any tech company for that matter. Don't just blindly follow the hype. Take the time to understand the company, their financials, the competitive landscape, and most importantly, invest only what you can afford to lose.
Absolutely. And remember, even if you're not actively investing in the stock market, staying informed about these trends can benefit you in countless ways, whether you're a student, a professional, or just someone who wants to understand the world around them. Keeping up with the forces that are shaping the tech landscape can help you make better decisions and navigate this rapidly changing world.
Well said. So to our listeners out there, keep your eyes peeled, stay curious, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The future of AI is unfolding right before our eyes, and it's an exciting time to be alive. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Microsoft and the AI landscape, I want to leave you with something to ponder. We talked a lot about DeepSeek and their ability to, develop these powerful AI models that are a fraction of the cost of their U.S. counterparts.
Yeah.
What if this trend just continues? What if developing these sophisticated AI tools becomes even cheaper and faster?
That's a great question. It really takes us back to this idea of AI democratization. If that barrier to entry continues to lower, I think we could see a pretty dramatic shift in who has access to and who controls these powerful technologies. Imagine a world where startups, researchers, even individuals can harness the power of AI to solve problems and to create, these really innovative solutions.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. Right now, we tend to think of cutting-edge AI as something that only large companies or well-funded research labs can do. But what if that changes? What if the next big breakthrough comes from a small team or even a single person?
That's the potential beauty of this kind of disruption. It opens up the playing field and allows for new voices and new perspectives to emerge. It's similar to what we saw with the rise of personal computers and the internet. These technologies that were once exclusive to large institutions became accessible to individuals, and that led to an explosion of creativity and innovation. We could be on the cusp of a similar transformation with AI.
It's exciting, but it's also a little bit daunting, right, to think about all the possibilities. But I think it highlights something really important that we've talked about throughout our deep dive. This AI landscape is constantly evolving. What seems impossible today could be commonplace tomorrow.
Exactly. And for companies like Microsoft, this means that they can't afford to just, rest on their laurels. They need to be agile. They need to be adaptable. And they need to be constantly innovating if they want to stay ahead of the curve. The emergence of DeepSeek and these other low-cost AI models is kind of a wake-up call, I think. It's a reminder that they can't just assume they'll always be on top.
So to bring this back to you, our listener, the key takeaway here is pay attention to these trends. Don't assume that the big players will always remain on top. Keep an eye out for those smaller, more disruptive companies. They could be the ones driving the next wave of innovation in AI.
Absolutely. And remember, even if you're not a tech investor or a developer, understanding these trends is important for everyone. AI is going to impact every aspect of our lives, from the way we work to the way we interact with the world around us. By staying informed, you can better prepare yourself for the changes that are coming now.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into Microsoft and the AI landscape. We hope you found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. As always, thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring.